Hey guys, today I'm gonna watch a video recommended by a friend, the Dark Author. This one's called Cliche. So the original title is too long, so it's supposed to be called I played a haunted copy of Sonic 3 called Sonic 3AB.exe. So this story is supposed to be cliche, so there's gonna be a lot of circumstances that are obvious. Alright, so let's watch. Alright, so here with the nice intro. Alright, so I played a haunted copy of Sonic 3 called Sonic 3AB.exe. Well, I looked it up while listening to creepypastas from the Shadow Reader and the Dark Author. While it rains horribly outside, when I am home alone with no families or friends around to help save me from these creepypasta cliches that I have to deal with in this game.exe. Okay. Alright, written by the Dark Author. Nice.
I'm a massive Sonic the Hedgehog fan, like a ton of people are in the world. I always enjoyed the classical games of Sonic, way more than the new ones. I was also a massive fan of
the classics were actually way better than the new ones.
Creepypastas, like Squidward Suicide and Karma Crabs. This story begins as I was browsing eBay and Amazon while listening to the Shadow Reader and the Dark Author. I was trying to look for action figures of my favourite characters from the series. Tails, Knuckles, Amy and Shadow.
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Conveniently, I found an eBay listing of a bunch of Sonic action figures.
That would
the
actually
exact
be
ones
awesome.
I wanted to find. They were going for $666.
Okay, that's
which was outrageous.
expensive.
My parents would kill me if I bought it with their money.
I don't even have $100.
So I decided to sadly click off the listing and browse eBay. It began raining outside of my house. It poured and poured, with the splatters of rain becoming more louder and larger by the minute.
So
as I was about to give up my search, my cursor began spazzing out and going crazy.
Okay, the cursor
I gasped in
went
shock
away.
as the mouse began moving by itself.
Oh.
I was almost in tears by the time it stopped. I was brought to a blood-red website. The website URL was certainly rather odd.
Oh no.
It was www.satanicCreepyGames.com. It presented me Sonic 3. The copy of Sonic 3 was rather awkward looking at the pictures provided. The case was completely whited out, with its pre-existing logos removed. Instead, black marker was used to spell out Sonic 3 AVI.
The title.
.exe. I paused for a moment. What kind of game was this? It reminded me of Sonic.exe.
Yeah, that one.
The way a game looked scary and hyper-realistic, with a bloody hyper-realistic plushie at the end. I shrugged it off. There was no way that this website was anything like Sonic.exe.
The casual response?
I mean, it was just a scary story. I checked, and the game was listed as being offered for $1.
Oh, that's
no
cheap.
way. $1 for a Sonic game? Holy crap, I had to buy this.
That's cheap.
So
way
with no
cheap.
hesitation, I bought the game and said that the game would be delivered soon. I smiled brightly and eagerly waited for the game to arrive.
I would too.
Oddly, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I caught sight of the website flashing me an error message.
Whoa.
I swore it said, "Want to play with me? I will make you bleed for Satan himself."
Now that's a big threat.
I'm sure that this was just my mind playing tricks on me. I then randomly heard the doorbell ring.
Oh no, the door.
Feeling excited, I happily dashed over to the door and swung it open. Nobody was there, oddly.
Right, so
however, there was what appeared to be a package on my floor.
There was a package.
I swear it was covered in a weird liquid that looked oddly like dried blood. I'm sure it was simply ketchup or something.
These are the red flags.
So I brought it into the house and opened it up. Inside of this package was, indeed, the CD that I had saw online.
The game.
The CD cover
the game
was
arrived
whited
early.
out with the black marker. Everything checked out okay to me, even if the mailman didn't physically appear to deliver this thing.
He probably
It was
just
like
ran.
it just appeared out of thin air. I opened up my disc and plopped it into my computer and eagerly waited for the game to start. While I waited, I decided to watch one of my favorite YouTubers,
Yeah.
the Shadow Reader.
Nice.
His content is so funny and cool. However,
Promotion.
one thing was odd. During one of his live streams, which I was watching the archive of today, hyper-realistic blood began pouring out from his eyes.
Whoa.
He smiled demonically for a split second.
You're on a
His
live
teeth were
stream.
yellowed
That's
and jagged,
very disturbing.
and I could swear I saw him mouthing my name. Out of nowhere, the video had closed itself off, and the game I had installed began randomly loading. I began
game
shaking
started?
from my experience. My entire body was white, and I was so scared. The Sega jingle played.
Yeah, I love that
Except this
sound.
one was different,
Oh.
yet familiar.
Oh no.
It was
It's
exactly
different.
the same as Sally.exe's jingle.
Whoa. That's very
Demonic
disturbing.
and ear bleeding. When Sonic flew into the intro, the screen cracked
Sonic
slightly on the
moving his
game.
finger on the intro.
The title card then appeared. This one was different too, and it made me quiver in fright. The logo was rusty and old. The water was replaced with blood that looked super hyper realistic, like it would come out of the game and come onto my TV screen. I saw demons flying throughout the mountains of Angel Island. The worst detail of all of this, however,
Oh no.
was Sonic.
Way
His
too many
fur
red
was covered in
flags now.
splotches of blood.
Oh.
All of it was crimson and hyper-realistic.
Also,
His
it was
eyes were
very
black and
realistic.
dead. His red pupils stared directly at me on the screen. I swear his tears were drops of blood
shoot.
that trickled onto the logo. His mouth was stretched widely across his face, with teeth that looked photorealistic,
That's a big smile.
like it would take a chomp out of me. I also noticed that in the bottom right of the screen, instead of Sega 1991, it now read Satan's Domain 666.
Satan, what have you
I
done?
was so shocked that my finger moved on its own, and I pressed the start button. I heard the demonic, satanic Kefka laugh from Sonic.exe. I jumped back out of my seat and fell onto my ass on the floor.
Oof.
I shakily got to my feet and noticed that the character selection screen was odd. The characters were slightly different. I can now play as Tails, Knuckles, Amy,
Oh, you can play as
and
well.
Shadow. But how?
Nice.
They aren't supposed to be in this game. They each had nooses tied around their necks,
Oh,
and they
no,
were both
yeah,
standing up
they're
on
dying.
chairs. They looked terrified, and more importantly,
Oh, the planet
they
of
were
these
looking
zombies being
directly
played.
at me, as if they were watching me. It then faded to black with the demonic Sega
They're always
jingle
watching.
playing once more. I shivered in fear as I awaited for the game to start. Eventually, it loaded me into the next level. It was called You Are Gonna Die.
Oh my god, I'm gonna
It began
die.
with me playing as Tails, despite me picking Knuckles on the character select screen. It started with him inside of what looked like Hydro City Zone.
Yo.
The water was drained, and everything looked dry and dead. No enemies were around. I got Tails to walk right, and the level
Okay,
continued.
Tails walking
There were
right.
multiple man-made ramps, oddly made out of bones that were stained with blood.
Oh.
I was so surprised at this. There was nothing to indicate that this game would turn out to be this gory and demonic.
There wasn't.
Tails stared repeatedly at the screen, every time I paused for just even a second. When we got further into the level, the ceiling began dripping with blood.
Ah,
Eventually, as I was nearing the end of the level, Sonic appeared right in front of me,
Sonic,
like how he
why?
did in Sonic.exe, and then the screen cut to static. I stared at the screen as the blackness lasted for approximately 27 seconds after the static had faded.
It continued.
It then cut back in with a text box. It read, "You are about to become Satan's new sacrifice."
Whoa.
It then put
hold
me
a
into the
moment.
boss arena where you would normally battle the mini-boss of Hydro City.
Yeah.
Except
Why
Tails looked scared and frantic.
Oh no, Tails,
The water
not Tails.
that was supposed to be here when you would battle the mini-boss was slowly pooling up from the ground. I also noticed that Sonic was hovering at the top, twirling a knife in his hand. This
You-
knife had flesh and photorealistic blood splattered all over it. Tails frantically tried to get away from the water, only to be unsuccessful, as eventually it reached the top.
Oh no.
The drowning music began playing as the Kefka laugh sounded over and over.
Ah, shit. That laugh.
Tails was doing a unique sprite, where he was thrashing around while frantically clutching his throat. Suddenly, the entire body of the fox became purple as he fell to the floor completely unconscious. Sonic smiled and swooped in. He proceeded to plunge the knife into Tails' head. It then cut to red static before too much detail was shown. But I saw a demonic Sonic with devil horns slashing into Tails, with hyper-realistic blood splashing all around.
Too realistic.
It took me back into the character select screen, and I was greeted with a horrifying sight. Tails was now hanging from the noose that was previously wrapped around his neck. His entire body was still a sickening shade of purple from the asphyxiation. I cannot bear to go into more detail with the other characters' deaths, but I will break them down into a summary. Amy was in the demonic version of Carnival Night Zone. The music was playing backwards and it was slightly distorted. I was forced into a race with Sonic.
Oh no,
Amy tried to catch him and kiss him like she would do in Sonic CD. But this time, Sonic led her right into a trap. A wall of spikes appeared before Amy could course correct her movement. She splattered straight into the spike wall, like cream in Sally.exe. Hyper-realistic blood was all over the spikes, and Amy's head fell off and landed on the floor. Poor Knuckles fared just as bad as Amy did. I was taken to the Hidden Palace zone. This time, however, things were different. The place was completely trashed. All the walls and floors had cracks and chips in them. The murals and stained glass were replaced with demons with blood coming from their eyes. Finally, when Knuckles made it into the boss room, where he normally would fight Sonic or Tails, he was the only one there. Instead, a cutscene played, where Knuckles went to the right, and he headed into the room where the Master Emerald was being kept. Sonic was right there, perched on top of the Master Emerald, staring Knuckles down with a smile. Knuckles did an animation where he cracked his fingers and put his fist in his hand, clearly indicating that Knuckles wanted to fight. Sonic laughed his Kefka laugh and teleported right in front of Knuckles. He then did a spin dash and sent Knuckles flying into a nearby wall. I heard a sickening crunch as Knuckles' left arm was practically dangling from the force.
Had to die?
Knuckles now had tears creeping down his sprite, but he still kept his strong, determined face and punched back at Sonic. Sonic, however, caught the fist and bent it back, snapping his arm. Knuckles fell to the floor defeated. Sonic walked over, smiled brightly, and chomped onto his head, exposing his hyper-realistic brain and blood. Lastly, Shadow was brought onto the Death Egg Zone. Only this time, there were a bunch of corpses strung out. Not of animals, or of people, but of robots. And they all laid in piles of their own nuts and bolts, while their eyes occasionally flickered on and off. Shadow kept his face of boredom as he skated throughout the facility trying to figure out exactly what had happened. He was rounding one of the last corners when Sonic appeared right in front of him, and then the game faded to static for a good minute. It then popped back into the game, with Shadow running away, just like how Tails did in Sonic.exe. Sonic was right behind him, holding a meat cleaver while smiling sadistically. He now had a set of devil horns, and his eyes were heavily bleeding hyper-realistic blood onto the floor. Eventually, Sonic caught up to Shadow and took his life. When Shadow died, the game glitched out and it produced a file onto my computer. My cursor moved on its own without my command, and it opened up the file. It was a photo of the hyper-realistic Sonic smiling while pointing towards me. The other characters were around or behind Sonic, all hyper-realistic and disgusting in their own ways. There was text at the very bottom of the picture file. It said, Look behind you.
Oh no.
I then heard some voices whisper softly to me. Try to keep this interesting for me. You now belong to Satan. Don't even try to run away.
Sonic
Kyle
with his admin powers.
was the first to go. Tom was next. But you are the next sacrifice. I turned around and proceeded to urinate myself when I saw what I saw. On my bed, staring directly at me, was all of those Sonic action figures, staring at me, watching me, with hyper-realistic, bleeding
probably thinking
eyes.
You did this to us. So yeah, so this was the video. Thanks to Dark Author for uploading this. I'll put a link in the description to your channel. So the video was very good. Not gonna lie. It did got me scared for a second. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I don't know when I'm gonna upload next. I don't have any time schedule. So see you guys.